tools today in the world of fraud, they would primarily be PII based, or they may be doing device risk assessment, or some transactional attributes and some rules engine running behind it to get to a risk assessment of a transaction. Now, when you come to PII-driven software, it mostly are models or something to do with ID verification, KYC. But the fact of the matter is, in today's world, fraudsters have access to clean sets of PII, and also fraudsters have very sophisticated photo identification software, so they can trick photo ID software that do ID verification. So not quite effective as you would want them to be, and there are alternatives available. Now, also in the space of device risk assessment, it has been in force for the last 10 plus years, and it's proving to be less and less effective in detecting fraud. Why is that? Because fraudsters have the means and the knowledge to make their devices appear very clean. And even if you were to participate in a consortium of devices, it's never a given that fraud reporting is good and device identification is very unique. And so those kinds of things are less effective in today's MOs from fraudsters, the kinds of sophisticated MOs that fraudsters have. And finally, when you look at transactional attributes to assess the risk of a transaction going out, especially for money moving out of your user's account, they sometimes may not be as effective. Why is that? Because fraudsters have found out that your customers are your weakest link, and if they can make them move money out of their own account using their own device, using their own credentials to log into their accounts, etc., they would be able to pass through all kinds of transactional monitoring systems. So in this world of fraud, in this new world of fraud, what is essential for you to look at is behavior of users in any kind of online interaction. And with behaviors, it's worth mentioning what we mean by behavior and the kinds of data that we collect. So we have essentially two kinds of data that feed our solutions. One is on the behavior side, we are collecting all kinds of user interaction. This is just a sample on the left-hand side of the kinds of data that we collect, by no means an exhaustive list, but it gives you an idea. It's typing patterns, it's swipes, it's mouse movements, it's doing nothing at all. That can also tell you a story. And on the right-hand side, we obviously collect device information of a whole list of things, because everything is happening online on a device, be it a web browser or a mobile browser or even a native mobile app. Now, what we do when we collect this rich set of behavioral data and device data, we feed them into machine learning models. So all our solutions are machine learning models which support primarily 4 different kinds of use cases. The very first being new account fraud. In account opening, you have many elements of behavior that can indicate new account fraud, especially if it's a case of third-party fraud or identity theft. We see a huge surge of bot attacks and deposit account openings in the US these days. So that's also something that we can detect by looking at the user behavior. And then we have account takeover solution. And within account takeover, we are looking for anomalous behaviors that are not indicative of the real users, of the genuine user. In that realm, we also have remote access tools that we can detect, the use of emulators, so on and so forth. The third solution is social engineering voice scam. It's one of the most egregious forms of fraud in today's world, and also one of the most difficult to detect. And with looking at behavior, we are doing a fantastic job of detecting scams as they happen in real time. And I'm going to talk about them in a little bit. And finally, our last solution is mule account detection, which is the latest innovation from our suite of offerings. We have a patent specifically on mule account detection, and it's detecting money laundering accounts at scale with some of the largest customers that you can imagine in the world, in the banking world. And at the end of it, these solutions, as an output, provide a score and several different attributes that can be around 200, but for any session, a handful of attributes will be triggered for sure. And to supplement the scores and attributes, we also have the flexibility to build rules with our rule manager so that we can take care of emerging fraud patterns rather quickly, or make a rule for some outlier conditions. And with that, that's the entire suite of solutions we have. We've been in business for the last 10 plus years. We go very deep into behavioral biometrics and machine learning models, and we have behavior kind of running in our blood, in our DNA, and we have 80 global patents in this area. Many large customers all across the globe, in North America, in EMEA, in Europe, in Asia Pacific, in Latin America. Now, to get into a specific use case within account opening, I'm showing you how we detect bots. Now, bot, by definition, is non-human behavior. It's maybe a script that's running. It may be a combination of a script that is running and a human which is running the script and doing some intervention in between. Whatever it is, since we are watching user interaction like a closed-circuit television, we are being able to see every aspect of the user interaction. Here is an example, a quick one. You have a social security number being typed in 1 second. Now, no matter how familiar you are with your social security number, you wouldn't imagine typing it in 1 second. So that's something that really stands out in this interaction. Also, here in this specific example, there is a mix of human and non-human behavior. The fraudster quite likely trying to trick the system into believing they're human, but we detect the finer distinctions between bot behavior and human behavior by looking at the entire session. Next, in the realm of account takeover, our methodology is to detect anomalous behaviors when compared with the established behavioral profile of a user. And here is an example of remote access being used. Now, remote access, when you try to detect it behaviorally, you will look for latency, like glitchy mouse movements. If it's on a handheld device like a smartphone, you'll probably not see any vertical movement of the device because it's being accessed remotely. And then finally, again, in a handheld device with the user interacting with 2 fingers on a glass interface, you'll not see a tap event or a touch area, things of that nature. Then moving on to social engineering voice scams. As I said, this is one of the most severe forms of fraud, and we are doing a really good job of detecting voice scams. Now here, the anatomy of a social engineering voice scam is a fraudster calling a genuine user, trying to impersonate themselves as a bank employee from the fraud department, calling to help the genuine user because apparently they see some suspicious activity in their account. Now, a lot of users fall victims to this kind of a scam, and they log into their account and then follow the instructions from the fraudster. Now, what is happening here is that if you look at the credentials being used, they are all good. If you look at the device that the user is using to log in, that's also a known device. The user always uses that device to log into their account. So no real red flags from those points of view. And then we see once the user is logged in, they're not really behaving like themselves. There's a little too much no action taken, maybe mouse doodling a little too much. 3, 4 times, 5 times we see in a scam session. It tells us that there's something unusual going on. It can be timing anomalies, like they're pressing a button just too long. Maybe imperceptible to the human eye, but when you compare that, usually the user takes 35 milliseconds, and here they're taking 350 milliseconds. That's 10 times longer, and it's indicating something unusual is going on. So these are signs of duress, signs of hesitation, and along with it, most likely the user is also using a phone to listen to the fraudster. So we pick up device movements, we pick up the presence of an active call during the online banking session. All of these tiny behaviors taken together paint the picture that a scam is going on in real time. And finally, our mule detection solution is being used at scale with very large banks, a very large problem to solve. All banks of all sizes are finding money laundering accounts in their user base. And what we are doing is providing benefit in two ways. One is preempting first-party fraud by alerting the banks of accounts that are likely to be laundering money. And also, we are bringing in massive efficiencies in the AML investigation process where the banks are not having to change their review capacity, but they're able to detect many more money laundering accounts that we alert them to. So if you compare past versus present, their efficiency in their operations by detecting massive number of mules, but by not increasing their review capacity, reviewing the same number of accounts every day, is a massive gain in operational efficiency. So that's all in a nutshell that we have today to talk about. If you have further questions, I'm reachable on LinkedIn and my email address is on the screen. So would love to answer some of the questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you. My apologies for the technical difficulties behind us there. We have a team of AV people who are going to switch out some cables and ideally solve that problem. Once again, people may come around and scan your badge just for attendance purposes, and as soon as we get the cable switched, we'll be right back.